Ad Lib Podcast, and just to address the elephant in the room, both Franco and Andrea are unfortunately not able to attend the podcast today. I know I missed the previous episode as well because I was busy with work. Andrea's a bit sick. Franco's taking a bit of a mental health break, which is very important for him. But we are joined by a very special guest. He, unfortunately, I do consider him a very good friend of mine.
Very?
Yes, very. Yeah. Joining us all the way from Dublin is my good friend David Deignan. David, can you introduce yourself to the listeners?
Yes, I can. Hello, listeners. My name is David, as Joe has rightly said. I've missed every previous episode of the podcast. Happy to be here today. And yeah, I'm calling from Dublin in Ireland. And big film fan. I'm actually working in the film industry at the moment as a development producer. So I work largely with a great company in Ireland called Samson Films. And we work in feature films and TV drama series predominantly. So that doesn't mean that I know what I'm talking about at all. But yeah, and yeah, I'm very, very lucky to call Joe one of my very, very good friends as well. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Joe.
There's a lot of love in here so far. It's surprising for you and I because we're normally at each other's throats. But I think we should give the listeners a background as to how you and I met. Because
you want to do that?
It's great. It's quite. I'm going to tell my version of the story, and you can pick holes in it as you're going to do. So
well, as long as you don't embarrass me in front of the listenership, you know, because I'm trying to build a freaking fan base here. Am I allowed to curse on the show? Am I allowed to curse on the show?
We after the 12-minute mark, we're allowed to curse as much as we want.
Okay.
Because basically YouTube will not allow us to monetize if we curse in the first 12 minutes. I believe that's the rule. It's a very silly rule. But anyway. Well, David and I met in 2018 at the 75th Venice Film Festival because we were both chosen by our respective countries to represent them in a jury at one of the competitions there called the Giornata degli Autori. Obviously both much younger. I was definitely better looking at the time as well.
Yeah.
Dave didn't have a top knot at the time. He was just a pasty white, fresh-faced Irish boy in a very, very hot Italy.
Not a good combo. Really not a good combo.
Really not a good combo. But all the jurors met, all 20. I should mention the thing we were representing is called 27 times cinema.
Yeah.
Where it's basically 27
times cinema.
What?
Formerly 28 times cinema.
Yes, formerly 28 times cinema. But I mean, let's leave Brexit out of this for now. It's essentially at the time.
We can talk about Brexit.
Yeah, exactly. It was 28 people under the age of 25 chosen by their countries to come together to form this young jury. And Dave and I met on the first morning when all the jurors met for the first time. And obviously we're at this huge film festival. We're all very excited and we're listing down the films we want to go and see. And I'm doing this quite loudly just to try and get people because obviously you want to get to know people. You want to go to the films together. And I'm listing down stuff, and Dave's kind of overhearing me. He's like, I want to see that movie. And we kind of realized straight away we had the exact same taste in what we were going for. I believe our top two at that festival were Ballad of Buster Scruggs and The Sisters Brothers.
Yeah.
So we rush off to the ticket booth to go and get tickets. And
I knew you were gonna go with this. I knew
but it's true, though.
I thought you were going to play really nice. You were setting it up as a really wholesome thing, and then you're embarrassing.
Look. Let me finish the story.
Okay.
We get in line to buy these tickets, and it's a decently long line, a solid 10-minute wait in line.
Yeah.
But we get to the front. I'm like, cool. I'm gonna go grab X amount of tickets for these screenings for the first 2 days. And Dave clutches at his pockets. He goes, "Shit, I've forgotten my wallet." And me just wanting to make friends and be nice, I go, look, it's fine. We're going to see each other every day for the next 2 weeks. I'll cover it. And that blossomed into a very beautiful friendship where I still don't believe you've paid me back for those tickets, but you're welcome.
I have paid him back. I remember it very vividly because, listeners, you have to know this, right? There's two things. One, he said, I forgot my wallet. This is a much more dramatic emergency situation that I thought I'd lost my wallet on the first day. And you have to remember, I'm pasty and very sweaty and I have no money. So I was really panicked. And additionally, I think the only reason it did blossom into a important, very good friendship afterwards is because this is such a massive green flag that Joe would be willing to pull me out of this ditch. And I gave him the time of day after that when no one else would, you know? So I think that was a really big moment for us. But yeah, we had a great time at that festival, and seen a lot of films, spent a lot of time together. There's no way I could have gotten away with not like paying you back, I think.
I think we've got a pretty open tab system now, where if the first person to get their wallet out pays, basically.
You.
Yeah, normally me, because I'm the prepared one. But yeah, we went through that trip with you. You were bumming a lot of stuff off me. I mean, I was the one who came prepared, so I always had a water bottle on me. I always had my wallet. I always had an extra phone charger with me. I always had a power bank. I always had pen. I always had paper.
I had a lot of this stuff as well. But I think sharing is caring. And again, it's like, it just shows that you have a lot of care for me, but you don't admit much. You really don't admit much with your words, but with your actions, I think you speak volumes.
Yeah, I mean, to quote a line that no one is going to get apart from me and you, it's like, I class you as a friend, but really you're a loser, you know?
I have no idea.
No one's going to get that reference, because no one apart from me outside of Ireland has seen Hardy Box. By the way,
well, there's one guy.
Go watch Hardy Box.
There's one Irish listener, apparently, to the podcast, one of our friends, who will get that reference. So, Mark Clark, if you're listening, get us.
Marco, probably our most devoted fan, to be honest.
Potentially.
Which, like, that's weird, because you were my friend first, and you should be the one, like, supporting me on my ventures.
Where is he now?
He's the one doing it.
Where is he now? Anyway, we shouldn't fight before 12 minutes.
Look, for all we know, Mark's in Aberdeen again, but that's an entirely different story for a different time.
Also, another inside joke.
Yeah.
Joe, also, on the Venice trip, we spent a lot of time sober, I think.
Yes.
And a lot of time not sober. I think that's an important distinction to make. And a lot of the big ground in our friendship was made in the not sober part.
Yeah.
I would say. But as a ceremonial thing, because I knew you were also quite hungover today, I heard a rumor. I just got to just like calm my nerves on my Ad Lib debut and to make you feel a bit sick. So, yes.
Well, actually, the thought of beer doesn't make me too sick right now, because it was a heavy spirits night last night. So beer doesn't sound too bad. Okay. But anyway, to move on, what is the Ad Lib Podcast for people who may be joining a bit late to this? The Ad Lib Podcast is a podcast founded in Malta, where we discuss film, we discuss TV, we discuss video games every week, and it's run by 3 very passionate people who just have a love for all these things. But we will go into our segments of the show. We always start with a bit of news, taking on some of the big topics. Today we'll be talking about CinemaCon, because that's going on right now, and I wish I was there, but not. And at the end, I will even have a review for Evil Dead Rise. So it's great to have Dave on the show with us, and as we ask all of our guests first, Dave, what have you been watching recently? Is there anything that's like been really doing it for you? Anything really bad? Anything you want to give a shout out to?
Well, it's actually been a pretty quiet last week or so for me. I haven't seen a lot of screen stuff, but you already discussed this on the podcast, I'm fairly sure, but I did see the new John Wick lately, so I won't dwell on it. However, oh my god, so good. Oh my god, it was so good.
Yeah.
And I love those films. Love Keanu and myself and a group of my friends, we kind of binged the previous ones leading up to the new one, and I just, there's something so dramatic about those films. They're so extra, and they know that they're like the telephone operating rooms, like this, you know, this having a base in the Eiffel Tower and the homeless network. It's so ridiculous, and I love it. Like, I would hook it into my veins. And anyway, this is going very extra for the beginning of the podcast, but I loved it. I thought, like, stylistically, it was beautiful. It was exactly what I wanted, which was just basically 3 hours of gun fu, basically, and some of the film cinematography as well, from like the over the top shots and everything, which is gorgeous. So I've been watching that, and I loved it. I saw Air recently as well, and which was okay, I thought, the Ben Affleck one. It felt a little bit like a very expensive commercial for Nike, and it was quite a good commercial for Nike. I'm not wearing any Nike, as the YouTube viewers can see, but yeah, it was fine. Like, it was kind of what you'd expect. It was kind of like, oh, didn't we do great to get Jordan to sign on and everything? And it was quite interesting to learn about that whole shoe deal, because I didn't know much about it. and the performances are all pretty good. Jason Bateman was particularly good, Matt Damon as well, but there was very little drama for a drama. There was no obvious antagonist other than like Nike might run out of money, which it turns out they don't, and they won't now because they have Air Jordans forever and ever. So those have been the two things I've watched in cinema lately. And I've also just started watching, very belatedly, I started watching The Bear on your recommendation.
So good.
Sorry, we can't curse before the 12-minute mark. You'll find it out, but it's great. And I'm also rewatching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia because I saw them last week live in Dublin, their podcast, which is amazing. I just have to get a little ditty on Joe early on because we are very nice to each other on this generally, but he's due one. But that's just never gets old. That show, Danny DeVito is like,
it's
iconic.
Fantastic. It's still my go-to when I'm working from home and I'm making myself lunch. Just chuck on an episode.
It never fails. Never fails.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. So we'll move on to our next segment with that. But to get straight into it, news that came out today, and I'm sure we'll get a decent discussion out of this. Black Mirror is coming back after 4 years. We finally got a cast announcement. It's coming in June. It's going to be Charlie Brooker all over again. And Dave, how do you feel about Black Mirror coming back after 4 years? It feels like longer than 4 years to me.
It does feel like longer. This was it was probably pre-COVID, was it?
Yeah.
The last thing I remember was Bandersnatch the last season? And the season with Andrew Scott? Was that the last one?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm excited for more Black Mirror. I always love a bit more Black Mirror. And I meant to ask you about this off air because I just briefly saw the announcement of this, and the one thing I didn't see was Charlie Brooker's name included in the announcement. I was thinking, is he involved in this, or is it like Netflix picking it up? So that's very reassuring to know.
Yeah, I believe he's still involved as a writer. I don't know if he's going to be the sole writer of all of it. I feel like that would be quite difficult for him to do. But there's a lot of big names involved. They released a cast list. I can't even going to try to remember some of them. There was definitely Aaron Paul. There was Zazie Beetz in there as well.
Oh, cool.
I believe. Oh God, what's his name? John David Washington. Denzel Washington's son.
Black Klansman. Right,
I believe he's going to be in it. But
cool.
Yeah, provided Charlie Brooker actually is back, I'm fairly excited because the thing I didn't like about Black Mirror before it had this hiatus was that we were getting it every year. When I first discovered Black Mirror back when it was still Channel 4, it was nice because it was only 3 episodes per season and there was about a 2-year gap between each season. And then I feel they kind of like, it became just another cog in the machine. The way it was going along, and like the episodes didn't have that much impact anymore.
Yeah, it began to feel a little bit less like an event.
Yeah.
I think. And I suppose the way that the show is made, it's the format of the anthology and everything, it doesn't really lend itself well to being milked because you know what a Black Mirror episode is. Like, the amount of times you'd watch a short film at a festival or like read a script or something like that when you're working in development, and you kind of go, this is cool, but it just feels like Black Mirror. But nothing does it as well as Charlie Brooker does it. But you're right, actually, towards the end there, when it was kind of an annual thing, it did begin to lose that little bit of luster. So it'd be great to get that back, and I'd be really excited to see, after so many years away, what they have. Is it the same sort of structure, like 3 episodes again, or have they announced?
I'm not really sure. I don't think they've announced that, but I imagine as I said, the cast list was huge, so I imagine there's going to be a couple more episodes. I think they started doing 6 episodes per season when they got acquired by Netflix. I'd honestly just prefer 3 really good longer episodes. They could even be like mini films. Let's say they were an hour and 10 minutes, hour 20 minutes. I'd much prefer that, but we'll see. It's gonna be good to have it back. I wonder what kind of stuff, because it's been, when you think about like the way the world's gone since we last saw Black Mirror, some crazy stuff has happened. I mean, we had Trump, we had COVID, there was the George Floyd riots in the US, everything to do in the UK surrounding Brexit and COVID with that. So I think whoever the writers are, if it's Charlie Brooker, they've definitely had a lot of ammunition to work with when it comes to the satire that they're going to be writing about. So I'm officially fairly excited.
Have you got a favorite episode of Black Mirror that you've seen?
Oh, I tend to like the really dark ones. I think my favorite one was, I can't tell you the name of it, but I believe it was season 2 with Hayley Atwell and Donald Gleason.
Oh, yeah.
Where she loses her husband, but then she gets sent like an android version of him. I thought that
was heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was rough.
Right.
Rough.
Oh my God. The one that just jumps into my head is the probably isn't the best episode, but I think it's like the first one I saw, which is Shut Up and Dance one, the thriller when he gets
good.
On his
That's really good.
Like, the last few seconds of that. Oh my God.
Yeah.
God. You know, I'm excited for it coming back now that we're talking about it. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. But anyway, moving on. I did just see, I'd actually be curious to hear your thoughts on this. Apparently, in the summer on Disney Plus, we're getting a documentary about Stan Lee. I know you're definitely more of a Marvel head than I am. So
yeah.
So what do you think about that? Thoughts, excitement? I haven't really looked into like who's really doing it, but I mean, it's going to be huge because it's Disney doing a Marvel property and the creator of Marvel. So
yeah. Well, to clarify for the listeners again, I am a Marvel head, to a point, but like many other people, I have pretty hardcore superhero fatigue at the moment, if I can use the in vogue term for it. And so anyway, loved the MCU unashamedly, was a big fan, even warts and all, up until, you know, Endgame and all that kind of business, and then it's been slowly grating away at me for the last however many 3 or 4 years as well. When it comes to a Stan Lee documentary, on one hand, I'd be kind of excited about it because the dude has just created so much of these amazing characters and is a proper personality in himself. Like, before I even knew who Stan Lee was, I remember like playing the Spider-Man games on my PlayStation, and he'd be doing the voiceover, and then he had all the cameos in the film. So he's one of those guys that like everyone just knows his face, you know the characters he's created, etc. But probably to my fault, I don't know that much about him as a guy, so I'd be pretty curious about that. At the same time, it's Disney making it, it's Marvel making it. I'm assuming Kevin Feige is the exec producer and all that kind of business, and so it'll be very loving, obviously, and I'm sure it'll be a bit of a puff piece about him. So whether it's the best place to learn objective standpoint, not saying it's anything wrong with him, I don't know much about him, but you know, it's going to be like celebratory, I suppose, so it'll be a good kind of probably dipping the toe in the water and learning about him and kind of going down memory lane in terms of the film cameos and that kind of thing. But pinch of salt maybe a little bit. What about you? Are you hyped for it?
I'm kind of the same. I have a love for comic books, but I mean, everyone knows by now how I feel about the MCU as a whole. Extremely hot and cold on most of those films. But read a lot of comic books growing up, especially Spider-Man, which he's the key man behind. I'd really love like quite raw deep dive on the person, which I don't think that's what we're gonna get. Just, as you say, I think it's gonna be much more celebratory of like, look how kind of hip and cool this old guy was who just wanted to make people happy by bringing us superheroes, and that like it's fine, you know. We're not gonna get an HBO style documentary where it's gonna maybe go to like seedier parts of the person, because I'd like to know if the guy does have seedier parts to his history. I'm sure he does, just given the time he grew up in. Yes. But yeah, I'm kind of like pinch of salt with you. It's definitely going to be a kind of a Marvelization of a documentary for sure.
I like how every documentary now is like, oh, I get down into the dirt. I want to see all underneath the fingernails, and like, this is assuming that he's not like some lovely genial old man who wants to put honestly.
And like, if he is,
like, give me pull up the floorboards and show me like all the beauty stuff, which you might not have, but if there are them, I don't think we're going to find out about it from the documentary, I suppose.
Yeah, and as you say, we could get a deep dive on him eventually. I was like, look, this guy was just a good dude. Like, it might just end up like that.
That doesn't make for a great documentary. I want to see
that. It doesn't.
That's all I'm interested in. Can I ask you if this is a non sequitur, probably, but as someone who is pretty hateful towards the MCU at the moment, are you going to watch? But is a big James Gunn fan? Are you going to watch Guardians of the Galaxy?
You see, that's the one I'm torn on. I'm really torn because having gone to the cinema a couple of times in recent months, they are showing the trailer before it, and it looks better than the first trailer. And it does remind me that when these characters are in their own movie, especially with James Gunn, I really like them.
Yeah.
So look, I haven't paid money to watch a Marvel movie like at a theater since Endgame. I think that's a pretty good run that I've had where I've not gone into a theater.
Whoa, how'd you get all those free films?
By totally legitimate means. No, I mean I've had Disney Plus for the last year as well. But I see that as kind of like I'm not getting Disney Plus for the Marvel movies. I'm getting Disney Plus for other things. The Marvel movies happen to be on it as well. But I think I might wait for some reviews to go out. I'll go to like my trusted sources of people who I tend to agree with, and then
that's me, folks. In the case you can't see the video, it's me.
Not you, because if you go back to my previous podcast, rest in peace, the Average Show Films podcast, you and I did an Endgame episode where we disagreed heavily on quite a few things. But yeah, depending on the reception from people of their opinions that I value. I guess I will put you in there. It'll be a bit of a pinch of salt one, but also I do value your opinion.
Wow.
I might break my cardinal rule for that one, simply because it's James Gunn's probably last film in the MCU, and I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah. I think it'll definitely last one.
Moving on James Gunn. Segue. He has just confirmed that Superman Legacy is in pre-production. So this is obviously the one that was announced. Where it's going to be another reboot of Superman. It's going to be a different one, apparently a lot younger. He's the writer on the film. That was confirmed as soon as it came across. And they were like, oh yeah, we're searching for the right director kind of thing. And we discussed on the podcast before, and I was thinking to myself, like, no one is going to direct a James Gunn script better than James Gunn. It's just not happening. But yeah, we haven't discussed this ever, you and I think. Thoughts on Superman Legacy and James Gunn?
I'm very curious about it. Very, very curious about it. Even though I'm more of a Marvel fan, probably, Superman was my guy growing up, you know? And it's been a long time since there was a live-action Superman that I was really interested in. Just I love the intention of all the Snyder ones, but wasn't mad on Cavill. Personally, I didn't like Man of Steel very much, which is something I've had many arguments about as well. Possibly with you, I can't remember anymore. But I wasn't.
I'm lukewarm on Man of Steel.
Yeah. So I'd love to see Superman done well on screen, and I think like the idea of pairing him with James Gunn is really exciting.
Yeah,
you can even just look at his recent stuff, like the Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, the DC stuff is so out there, so stylistic, and the idea of bringing that to Superman, the biggest character probably in superhero comics, is like, that'll have more eyeballs on it than anything he's ever done before. It's his biggest film ever. So, but the fact that he's in, usually if that was being done with someone else, I'd be like, oh, they're going to water it down, surely, or like, what style will he bring to it? But it's him. He's like the head honcho in DC too. So it's really interesting to know what kind of direction it'll go in. Like, what kind of audiences will it be for? Will it have some of the like stylistic inclinations of like the Guardians, where like the music is concerned? How much humor will it have versus like stoicism and all that kind of business? I don't know. And then like I'd be very curious to see who they're going to cast as well. Like, is it a known name? You know, all that kind of stuff. I'd love to see a classic Superman versus like Luthor story as well.
Yeah.
I've seen Zod. I've seen enough of Zod. I want to see like a bit of scheming from Lex, and I'd love to see a lot more. I'd like to see the Superman and Clark Kent contrast in there. I'd like to see more Clark. We don't get enough screen time. Give Clark a solo movie, actually. Yeah. You know, just what the Prophet is like. You know, they Prophet.
Apparently, this one is going to be following Clark Kent as he's beginning his job as a journalist at the Daily Planet. You mentioned like how out there like Suicide Squad and Peacemaker are. Did you watch all of Peacemaker?
I got about 3 episodes in, and then for whatever reason I didn't finish it, but I saw the ending as well.
Yeah,
which is the best way to watch a TV series, I think. Watch
yeah, exactly, yeah. Because I was gonna say what surprised me the most about Peacemaker, why it was probably my favorite TV show that year it came out.
Wow.
Was it had the really wacky stuff, and you had Vigilante, who's hilarious, and John Cena was surprisingly great as an actor. Like no one saw that coming. But despite how James Gunn it was, and it was bloody and it was crude and it was witty, there were some very, very good moments of like human connection and humanity and emotion. So it's clear he knows how to do that.
Wow.
It's going to be really interesting to see what kind of like. I have a feeling with some of the properties they're going to go full comic book craziness, because the DC universe has these nuts moments. I mean, if we look at the end of the Suicide Squad when they fight Starro, where it's this huge giant starfish and people are getting possessed by it and stuff. It's wild. Personally, and I don't know why people haven't done this properly yet as a deep dive, I'd love to see a Superman movie where they delve into the he just wants to be a regular person side of Superman. He hates the fact that he has these powers because of the responsibility that comes with it, because of the life that you have to lead because of it. I don't think James Gunn is going to do that. I think he's probably going to go for something a bit more fun. I don't know how pulpy it's going to be. The more I think about this film and James Gunn behind it, the more questions I have, but also the more excited I get, because I go, this could be something really special with that. But yeah, Superman James Gunn, allegedly coming out next year.
Oh, really?
They had said 2024, so we'll see. Okay. I imagine it'll probably get pushed to 2025, which is probably better, to be honest. But yeah.
It has a lot of potential. I'm actually really excited about it.
Yeah.
Curiosity will kill me.
Yeah.
Like what way it's gonna go.
Yeah. That whole DC thing, like the stuff they announced before, it sounds bonkers. Like what they're planning to do.
Like I think this is it, because like I suppose Marvel is so joined up to the point that it's become so stale and vanilla, and without a compelling intertwining narrative like the Thanos thing gave, and the novelty of like this is all connected. Whoa! Now that it's into watch these films, watch these TV series, they're all connected. But it's just, and there's no compelling antagonist, I don't think, or really any forward momentum in the thing. It's just all the flaws of like how samey their films are becoming really badly exposed, and you know, from diehards to like casuals, everyone's kind of going, this is kind of boring now. DC, like, I'm so curious to know, like, is it all going to be gun energy, or like, I'd imagine he's going to give people canvases. It's like, go off and just do what you want, because like that just seems to be his vibe. I don't know. But then it's also like such an uncharacteristic like creative risk a little bit from DC to give people that much leeway. So it could be it could instill faith back in me, being like, oh, Hollywood can like do stuff. Or, you know, could tank. But either way, it's going to be entertaining, I think.
Yeah, you say that. I mean, Gunn came out and he said, look, we're looking with this DCEU, we're looking to give writers free reign on stuff. So I think what they're going to do is they're going to have certain characters in films which are part of a certain universe. So like Matt Reeves is going to finish his Batman trilogy. But that Batman trilogy has nothing to do with the DCEU. And they've said it outright, look, Reeves has got that. We love that. It's great. There's even going to be the TV spin-offs of that as well. But they're considered Elseworlds. They're their own thing, that's really good, because they can do the dark and gritty thing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to intertwine with the fun and pulpy thing if it comes to that. But yeah, I'm overall very excited for what's coming with the DCEU. Moving on to like our final bit of, not really news, but I thought we could get a good discussion out of this. Beau is Afraid has released in the United States and some other territories. It's been in production for ages, initially called Disappointment Boulevard, from Ari Aster, who you and I are huge fans of. It's his passion project, what he calls nightmare comedy starring Joaquin Phoenix. And it's dividing people right down the middle. We had the maestro, Martin Scorsese, come out and say that he loved it, which is always a very good sign. But with fans, it's either falling on the side of this is a masterpiece and it's really good that Ari had the freedom to do this, and God bless A24 for letting him. And on the other end, you have fans who are like, fuck this movie. It's too long. It's too indulgent. Ari Aster's career is fucking dead in the water after this. This is an atrocity. He should pay back all the fans who spent money on this shit. It's toxic, to say the least. But you and I obviously haven't seen the film, and it is one of our most anticipated films of the year, I think. I think we can have a decent discussion of... we mentioned like Marvel before and how formulaic it's becoming and stuff like that. I think it's great that a company like A24, they're killing it at the moment with the success they had at the Oscars, only being a 10-year-old company. But the fact that they're willing to just pretty much write a blank check to Ari Aster, because he's had 2 huge films with them before, and they're like, look, fucking go do whatever. And perfect. I mean, at one point, Beau was Afraid was going to be 4 hours long, and it's still about 3. You
can see why Scorsese loves it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it begs the question, do directors basically owe a debt to audiences to make things that they want to see? Is creative expression and freedom and indulgence bigger than that? Well, I'll throw it over to you first.
It's a big question. I was also very distracted during the asking, because you'll notice, guys, if you're watching the video, I didn't have a lot of time to set up. My forehead is like radiating light. This is what it was like in Venice. Heating light right under, hanging out here. It's beautiful stuff. So I'm going to maneuver myself around here. Look out. There's no really way to make this better, but nevertheless, I think I've been very entertained by some of the reviews I've seen for both, like the initial reactions, because like you said, it has gone from everything being like, this is a magnum opus, this is beautiful, to like, this is a career ender, this guy's a psycho, he's dead to me, blah blah blah. I don't know. I think that like, I think the fact that they gave him a blank check a little bit is a beautiful thing, and I think he's earned it through having such an original voice through his first 2 films, which were critical and commercial successes. And I don't know, it's so unusual to see that at any level of film, from low budget to Hollywood level, to see a director kind of given free rein, whether it's like, yeah, in terms of the content, the editing room, whatever it is, like, and we hear so many good or potentially good films ruined by interference at every level, and conflict of interest, everyone being worried about making the profit back justifiably, making an investment back, I should say, becomes almost the dominant worry when they're making a film. And it should be about the creative intention of the writer, the director, whoever it is. And I think Ari Aster has earned his stripes in that respect to be able to have a proper run and show what he has to do. If that's very unhinged and very out there, I mean, it's Ari Aster. What did you all? I think it's past 12 minutes now. Fucking stop. Have you seen films like this? Of course you're going to get that. I'm very hyped for it. I think between that and like Joaquin Phoenix, I don't know much about the film, and I haven't read a lot of in-depth reactions, so like I don't know what to expect from it. But I think that's probably a good thing, because it does seem a bit bonkers. What are your thoughts on it?
I tend to totally agree with you on the people saying that this guy owes a debt to his audience and he should be paying them back for them spending their money. I think the only time that argument holds any ground is if you take a big beloved IP. If you take Star Wars, if you take The Lord of the Rings, that's when you need to really take how people are going to react into account. You need to do things, let's say, in a more respectful manner. Other times where I think you need to take fans into account is if you're doing a documentary about a beloved person in any respect, because you have to pay respect to the person and that will pay respect to the fans. But I think it's ridiculous that people have kind of gone out with this. As you say, it's Ari Aster. No shit. If he was given a blank check, he was going to make one of the most fucked up films of the last 20 years. If for film fans like you and I know you have seen this film. If you go back and look at Ari Aster and the films he made before he made feature films, his short films, and especially his graduation film, Strange Thing About the Johnsons, you know that this person likes extremely darkly comic, unhinged shit. And like for me, after like I do consider films like Hereditary and Midsommar films that really made me appreciate film even more, because his attention to detail and the way he directs is second to none in an industry where there's so much staleness and so much, as you say, interference. And it's great to see A24, this really successful company who have had huge success at the Oscars, they're still continuing this trend of, no, we support the artists. And at the end of the day, film is an art form. If he wants to make something more avant-garde, more wild, he's the director. It's his job. He should be allowed to do it, and people should be prepared to be disappointed. People should be prepared to love the work, and that's the best thing about art. It drives discussion. I think the people claiming that his career is dead in the water is just the dumbest claim on earth, because any publicity is still publicity, and this is, for such a kind of niche film, this is one of the most talked about films in the world at the moment, and it's making a lot of money because of that.
Yeah.
So
I don't know, like it can definitely change the perception of him with financiers, I think, because he begins, depending on how it does financially. I haven't been keeping track of that at all. Like I said, I'm sure it'll make money, but will it make its money back? Critically, when it goes on wider release, how will people feel about it? I think that I was thinking there about, like, say, Charlie Kaufman, who, you know, one of the most original writing voices, I think, in cinema. And like his directorial debut, Synecdoche, New York, was not rear-ender to the point that he's still directing films, but like he can't get things off the ground anymore, you know? That was like a similarly wild concept driven by like a character actor, and it kind of was unwieldy and divisive, critically lauded by most, commercially a fucking disaster. And he, you know, his directing career has never picked up after that either. And
I mean, he did have I'm thinking of Ending Things on Netflix, to be fair.
He did,
which again, critical darling,
but low budget. It
also went straight to Netflix.
An adaptation as well went straight to Netflix, and there's probably, like, I don't know the dates, but there must be a decade between those, maybe even more. So what Ari Aster has in his pocket is that he has, you know, 2 critically and commercially lauded films already as director and writer. So he's probably got more credit in the bank, whereas maybe Kaufman is an example of just the way it can go. But I don't know, like, it is probably a risk that, like, if it fails hard, if it does tank hard, which it probably will, like, to be honest. It's I've heard amazing things from people that I know have seen it. One of my friends was in New York this week and saw the film, and she's a massive Ari Aster fan as well, but she was like, I don't have the words, but I love it. So, like, I'm very excited as well, but yeah, I think it's a risk for him, and I hope he's able to still keep doing what he wants to do, because I'm assuming that he's had that throughout his career, you know. Hereditary, particularly Midsommar, like, they obviously pushing the boat further and further out, but I don't know, I hope whatever he wants to do after this doesn't get held back by the reaction to this.
I think if he keeps making stuff with A24, he'll be okay. They seem to have a good relationship, and they like pushing weird shit, which is good.
It's working. It's working out pretty well.
Yeah, but moving on to things in America that we can't see, because unfortunately we don't live there, and we don't have the money to attend these things.
Unfortunately, we don't live there.
Yeah, CinemaCon has been on for the last couple of days, and we're just going to go through briefly, because obviously we haven't seen any of this stuff because we're not there, but we can only speculate on what we've heard. Now, I've got a bit of a list from the 2 big companies revealing stuff there, which are Sony and Warner Bros. Let's start with Sony. We did allegedly get trailers for Napoleon, for Bad Boys 4, for Gran Turismo, for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. There was another trailer shown, And allegedly there was a Ghostbusters Afterlife sequel announced as well. But the one thing I do want to discuss with you is, again, we've never discussed this, you and I, because when it was announced, it was kind of like, that movie's going to fucking suck, like the other superhero properties that Sony have taken on.
Wave up.
But Kraven the Hunter, starring Aaron Taylor-Johnson, has been confirmed to have an R rating.
Okay.
Yeah. So like, that immediately piqued my interest, because I'm like, are Sony taking risks with a superhero property now? Like, what do you think?
I would question whether it's a risk anymore, because post Deadpool financially, you know, they know people want that.
Yeah.
I think that like it's been shown that it doesn't lock out viewers from going to these things.
Yeah.
I think it's exciting to the point of, well, the movie's probably going to suck, but it'll be fun that they could maybe have a bit of crack with the violence or the F-bombs, whatever they choose to do.
Yeah.
I would really struggle to get myself hyped up anyway about a Kraven the Hunter movie, not because Kraven the Hunter isn't cool, but because Sony. You just mentioned Across the Spider-Verse. That's going to be great, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the live action stuff, thanks. Although I heard Morbius is really good. I haven't seen it, but the memes are quite nice.
Actually, if you fancy the time, Andrea, other co-host on this podcast, he has a scathing video review on the YouTube channel of Morbius back when he went to go and watch it. So if you fancy a laugh and you want to continue drinking, you can do that after we wrap this episode.
I'm on my own, and it's I'm pretty sure it's Wednesday, so we'll definitely do that. Yeah.
But yeah, I hope we get to see the other trailers soon. I'm curious to see what Napoleon's looking like, because a lot of that was actually filmed in Malta as well. So big old Ridley going to Malta again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's a proper like historical epic.
I imagine. Yeah, it's Ridley going through the paces. I mean, I think he needs to probably stop making films, because I think he's pushing 85 now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it could be cool. Joaquin Phoenix again. It's Ridley and Joaquin reuniting in a historical epic in Malta, where they made Gladiator together as well. Could be a recipe for great success and good times all around. But only time will tell.
Are they doing Gladiator 2 in Malta?
They are doing Gladiator 2 in Malta as well. Ridley seems to like the place. It might have something to do with the cheap alcohol, which he will be gravely disappointed that is not the case anymore.
The Pastizzi? Is that a thing?
Yes. Yeah, he's probably a big fan of those as well.
Yeah.
People who tend to visit usually are.
Malta, you know, I wasn't dragged off the street. I've been.
He has been.
Yeah.
He's a big fan of Cisc and Pastizzi. We can confirm.
Popeye World as well. Holy Trinity of Malta.
And I think you called it Popeye World as if it's like a Disney World, when it's literally just called Popeye Village, and you can walk through the entire thing in 5 minutes.
It's a bit more quaint than a world.
Yeah, definitely. But moving on, Warner Brothers obviously made a lot of new trailers and announcements. Dune Part 2 got a trailer, and we can actually discuss this, because the little tidbit we got about Dune Part 2 is it's going to be very different to Part 1 in terms of its tone. I forgot exactly who said it, but they said how the first film was a bit more contemplative drama, with like some action obviously towards the end. They've said this next one is a full-blown war film. So how do we feel about that?
Well, I didn't see a lot of this today, but I did see a quote from, I think it was Villeneuve, and he said that there's a sequence towards the beginning of the film where Timothée Chalamet like rides a sandstorm. And
the sandworm, I believe.
Sandworm.
Yeah.
But it's all practical apparently, and I was like, I'm down. However that works. I mean, I think that the first one was so pensive and meditative for the most part.
Yeah.
And like, I love Villeneuve's whole style, and I think when he does action, he does it very well, but he doesn't do it that often. So I'd be really curious to see, particularly with like gorgeous expanses, the budget, where he goes with it. There's a lot of new cast coming into this film though as well, and a lot of good actors. So I'd be really I hope it's not all fighting. I'd love to see, I'd love to see a bit more Zendaya. She didn't have a lot to do in the last one. I mean, I know Florence Pugh is there, Austin Butler, another character, so it'd be great.
It's probably going to be about 3 hours long as well. Like, who are we kidding? It's going to be a long film.
Is this the second of 3 or the second of 2? I can't remember.
I believe it's the second of 2.
Okay.
I believe it's the second of 2. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of ground to cover there in terms of...
Yeah. I imagine probably diehards of the book aren't going to be too happy about this, but I mean, with a lot of things, I kind of say, like, if you're going to be too precious about material and letting directors have some form of artistic license, you just grow up a little bit, different things are good. I used to be one of those people who was like, no, it has to be the same, and they left this out, but no, like, Villeneuve, great filmmaker. I'm sure whatever he does with Dune 2 is at the least going to be beautiful and entertaining. Yeah,
it's a safe bet.
Yeah,
safe bet.
We did apparently get there were more trailers for Barbie, which I'm very excited for as well. For Blue Beetle, which looks fucking terrible from the trailer that I have seen that is out there in the wild. No, it's the DC character Blue Beetle, who no one has heard of. So there you go.
Okay, who's in that?
I genuinely couldn't tell you.
Gross.
Yeah,
I'll watch it though. That's the
we did. There was an original trailer. We discussed it on the podcast a couple episodes ago, and none of us, all of us, was kind of like, this looks shit. Interestingly, apparently a Beetlejuice sequel was announced, but with no other details. That just Beetlejuice 2 has happened. Do you have any thoughts on Beetlejuice? Because I don't have many.
I don't have many. I seen it when I was a kid. I am a big Michael Keaton fan. So now I'm beginning to understand why he signed on for The Flash, was to get that Beetlejuice sequel back off the ground. But I don't know, like, what sort of audience is there for Beetlejuice now?
Yeah,
I have no idea. Like, yeah, it doesn't seem like it's something that's needed necessarily, but I know there's been, like, among its cult fans, that there's been a clamour for it. So I mean, I'd be intrigued in a way to know. Intrigued, that's what I used. Intrigued. So intrigued about it, but basically no, not many thoughts on Beetlejuice.
Yeah. The one we can discuss a little bit, because this actually goes back to our James Gunn conversation. People got to watch the entirety of the Flash movie.
I heard so.
Yeah, the Flash is, in James Gunn's words, it's the film that's going to reset the DC extended universe. And the trailer looked very good.
It did.
And some people, we did get the news that Tom Cruise requested to watch it, and Tom Cruise watched it, and he said, "This is the film that the world needs right now," which is...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a fantastic line from the strangest man in Hollywood. But apparently, people at CinemaCon said it's really good, like it's great. So
yeah, I seen it got amazing.
Yeah.
It got amazing reactions. I have been tuned out of it because Ezra Miller is insert profanity here. And I'd say it's a shame for everyone else involved in that film that it's going to be tarred by his brush. And that's quite a quote, in that this is going to be the film to reset the universe if they're planning on... I don't know, is he a staple of this going forward? You surely have to get rid of him. But nevertheless, I'd be kind of pleasantly surprised to hear that it's good, because, like, again, big Michael Keaton fan. The fact that he's coming back as Batman, unashamedly, like, I know that they used his "I'm Batman" quote in the new one, and they're throwing back a lot to the Tim Burton films. I'm gonna go all in for that. Like, you'll just get me on pure nostalgia buzz with this, and like, there was something about it, like the trailer that looked very good, and like kind of messing with the DC films that we've already seen by bringing in like Supergirl and bringing Michael Shannon back and stuff like this. I think it's really interesting looking, and I've really got no idea what's going to happen in the film. It does look a bit batshit, so like, I'm definitely curious, but then also like feel a bit ill about it as well. But cool to hear people were hyped about it, I guess. Like, it's a good early indication of the direction that they're going in, I suppose, with these films. Are you hyped for it?
I I would say quietly hyped. Obviously, there's the issue about Ezra Miller. We didn't know whether this film was actually going to see the light of day. I'm trying to turn a blind eye to the obvious nostalgia baiting of having Keaton in the film.
It's not impossible.
In the context of the film, because it's basically going to be Operation Flashpoint, but live action, does make sense because there's going to be different timelines. So yes, I'll allow it this time. You're allowed to nostalgia bait because in the context of the film, it does make it. You're not just going like, "Ooh, look at old Batman. You remember him, right?" There's a reason for it, at least. It's surprising me every time when people come around like, "Yo, this Flash movie is really, really good," and then I saw the trailer. I'm like, "That looks really cool." It shouldn't be the case, but yeah, I would say quietly excited for this one.
It's actually such a surprise because hasn't it gone through like some of the worst like development stroke production?
Oh yeah, yeah, terrible.
So many writers on that thing. So many, multiple directors, I think, as well, and then all the other obvious stuff too. It's almost a miracle that it's going to make it to theaters in the first place, and making it in a shape that's good is like, this must be a different timeline.
Yeah, it's certainly weird. But anyway, that wraps up everything, at least I thought was noteworthy from CinemaCon. So for our final part of the podcast, I had the immense pleasure of watching Evil Dead Rise this week, directed by Lee Cronin, Irishman, just like yourself, David. But before I get into the review, Dave, we've never spoken about the Evil Dead franchise and about Bruce Campbell or Sam Raimi. I am a huge fan of for me, it's one of the best trilogies ever made. But I'd like to hear from you.
This is an awful thing. This is an awful thing that Joe is doing to me. We haven't spoken about it. And I know he's a massive fan of it. And I told him this off air, gang. But I've only seen the second one, and I saw it when I was a kid. And so it's one of the glaring omissions on my like need to watch list. I haven't seen Titanic. I haven't seen Evil Dead.
You haven't seen Titanic?
Is me. I'm exposing myself
Christ on a bike
on the Ad Lib Podcast. Not, I'm still for the audio listeners. I'm fully dressed, but I haven't seen these films. And so yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Evil Dead franchises. Not only have I haven't seen them, I'm gonna have to do John Wick and probably binge all of them before watching Evil Dead Rise. I think.
I think you should, but so the Evil Dead, it's so weird because the trilogy, despite being a trilogy, is such an almost disconnected trilogy. Because the first one is definitely played a lot more for horror, and it's extremely low budget, but it's very effective. And the second one is kind of a sequel to the first one. I won't spoil it because like when it clicks of like what's happened, it's really funny and also really cool. And the third one is just like, the third one isn't even called Evil Dead 3. It's called Army of Darkness, in case you don't know. But that is a just complete insane batshit, like kind of like offshoot of the series. There's also, I sadly finished it last week because it was my go-to when I'd be cycling in the gym. I'd watch the show, Ash vs. Evil Dead, which is considered canon with the Evil Dead trilogy. For me, fantastic companion piece to the show, nails the tone of what Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness were going for, expands the world and actually leaves it very open to keep going forward, and I really hope eventually they do. Now, on the newer Evil Dead films, so Evil Dead Rise and Evil Dead from 2013, directed by Fede Alvarez. So it's been 10 years since an Evil Dead remake, and now we have technically a sequel to it. These are going much more for strict horror. There's none of the goofiness that Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness have. There is some humor, albeit very dark, sort of very dry, sarcastic humor in it. But essentially, they're extremely bloody horror films set in the Evil Dead universe, like involving the Book of the Dead and Deadites and demonic possession and stuff like that. The 2013 kind of reboot, I do like, because one thing I tend to say on this podcast a lot is I love it when a director just takes a big swing at something. Like, it's clear they had a lot of fun making it and they had a vision and they took a huge swing. Maybe they struck out, but it's nice to see someone do an effort with the swing. The main problem with the 2013 one is that its writing fell into the tropes of this is a bit stupid. Like, some decisions that people make in that film, even with like the logic applied to typical horror films, you are like, come on, like, it's a bit, you obviously didn't have to make that choice, kind of thing. And the best thing about this most recent one, Evil Dead Rise, which, just like, gonna say it from now, I loved this film. I had a fucking great time at the theater when I saw this film. Is Lee Cronin just makes an extremely simple story, and it's just effective, and none of the decisions are stupid. They all make sense in the context of it. So if you don't know what the basic story is, I won't give away too much. It's basically this one woman goes to visit her sister. Her sister lives in this condemned building with her 3 kids, and she goes to visit her sister just to help her with something she's going through. There's an earthquake, and this earthquake basically unearths the Book of the Dead again, because it's then found by the children. And when Evil Dead fans know, when the Necronomicon, the Book of the Dead, is found, bad shit's going to happen. So it's extremely contained, pretty much like one location. Everything happens pretty much inside this apartment or in the apartment building itself. It's extremely bloody, like, it's gruesome, but never in the torture porn kind of way, which is really refreshing. It just doesn't care about how much blood they're going for. And it's really cool because the Evil Dead franchise is known for some groundbreaking camera techniques. Like, it's unofficially the birth of the shaky cam was Evil Dead, where they put a camera on a 2x4 piece of wood, people stood on either side of it, and they would run holding either side of the camera, and that's how you get a shaky cam. And there's a lot of kind of like hints to how the Evil Dead is made and what makes the Evil Dead, while also being incredibly modern and stylish. Like, I thought Hole in the Ground was pretty good from a directorial point of view, Cronin's previous film. Not the strongest script, but definitely the stuff he does with atmosphere and with the camera is great. And it was fantastic here. You've got an incredible, I would say the lead performance is Alyssa Sutherland, because she's probably got the most to do, but even everyone else is fantastic as well. But Alyssa Sutherland in particular is incredible in this film. Like, she's like stamped right down, she's a horror icon already after this film. And it's just a really, really, really good looking, really entertaining, really bloody action horror film, which for me is the perfect direction for the Evil Dead to go in. Because I feel like if you can't do the goofy, tongue-in-cheek, almost Looney Tunes version of the Evil Dead in this day and age if you don't have Bruce Campbell as Ash Williams in your film. Because, I mean, it's no spoiler, because everyone knows Bruce Campbell is not in the Evil Dead remake from 2013, and he's not in this one as well. When they're in the same universe, of course, because it concerns the Book of the Dead, but it's really, it's to me, it kind of feels like, to go back to the DC conversation, it's almost like these Evil Dead films are the grittier Elseworlds kind of thing, and then the previous Evil Dead films or the TV series are like their own like MCU kind of thing, where they're a lot more lighthearted. They're still very bloody, but they're more tongue-in-cheek. They're much more played for comedy, and these ones are more played for horror and action and a thrill ride. I don't think you definitely don't need to watch the Evil Dead series before you go and watch this. I think you should. I think you should, just so because you, especially you as a film fan, Dave, you'll like the things that you see in it and the allusions to the camera work and to certain situations that happen in the Evil Dead. I would recommend, just for the tone you're going to get, I would recommend watching the 2013 reboot, because tonally they're very similar. That one's just quite dumb in its script, but also still really fucking entertaining. But yeah, if you're in for, if you're up for a lot of blood, a lot of thrills, some good scares in there as well. And even, I'm going to say to you that I think Lee Cronin definitely played The Last of Us Part 2 with something he decides to do towards the end of the film. And you'll only figure that out when you eventually watch this film. But yeah, I can't recommend Evil Dead Rise enough. I had a great time in the cinema. There was a bloke next to me who was about 50 years old. He had a giant bag of McDonald's with him. He powered down 2 of the £1 burgers and a wrap and fell asleep for the entire film. It was great.
I think I was on a date with him.
But no, yeah, Evil Dead Rise. For me, I remember when I first heard they were going to make yet another Evil Dead film. I was kind of like 2013 one was kind of cool, but it was a bit stupid. Like, is this a piece of IP that's going to stick in this day and age? Are they going to try and bring Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi back to go the wacky route, which I think eventually they will do, by the way, because Raimi and Campbell are still both involved. They're executive producers on everything Evil Dead has done. I mean, Bruce Campbell is in all 4 seasons of Ash vs. Evil Dead as well, because that's about Ash Williams. Yeah, I can't recommend it enough. I had a fucking great time. I remember I was only won over by this film when I saw the final trailer that was released for it, because I'm like, that looks like a really cool way to apply this story.
I'm pretty sold on it. I think I should probably finally go and save myself any more embarrassment by just watching the whole season of the series, and then get around to this. As an Irish person, I'm kind of obligated to do it as well for Lee Cronin.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was delighted to see him getting the opportunity to do this, because it's a big step up from, say, Hole in the Ground. But like, I kind of agree with you there. I think his direction really shone out in that film, and it's obviously a real badge of honor that Sam Raimi and co spotted that as well. And yeah, I've heard nothing but good stuff about the film as well, and I think that's particularly impressive when, as you said, when you hear of like another beloved brand being revived, you kind of go, like, do we need that? Do we really need that? I'm trying to think, like, we could name off so many recent examples, but Kraven the Hunter, for example, like, do we need a Kraven the Hunter?
Yeah.
Do we really need this? But
I mean, I know one you feel very hot about is them doing Harry Potter again.
No. We could go. That's a whole different podcast. I could go on a big tangent about that, but not a fan. And you can dig this up when I'm absolutely loving the series in about 5 years. But I'm not happy with it at this stage. I do not need to see the flashback episode about how they made the Marauders map in Curie. I'm not interested. But yeah, I'm hyped. I'm going to binge that whole season. You probably just made my Sunday plans for me. Now I'll watch the Evil Dead.
Yeah. If it's any consolation, if you do a marathon of the original Evil Dead trilogy, each film is only 93 minutes long.
That's perfect. Not to get too on cinema at the cinema about it. I told myself I wouldn't mention that. Love to check it out on cinema at the cinema. That's the perfect runtime for a film. You know, there's nothing that, you know, there's nothing that does marketing like saying it's 93 minutes. I'll stick that on. So again, you've completely sold me on that.
Yeah, it's what I have to say about the entire franchise. Even the 2013 remake, only about an hour and a half. Evil Dead Rise, I think, is 1 hour 40. It's slightly longer, but throughout the whole Evil Dead verse, they don't waste any time. They're all so tight, and they come in, they get their job done. They're always really fun, at least in my opinion, and they're great. Definitely see it in the theater. Because I was quite lucky. I went to watch it alone. I didn't take Tal with me because she's not a fan of these films, just because she's not into like all the blood and guts and stuff. But I went alone. It was Sunday, and I went to the 12:30 viewing in the afternoon, so just after my lunch. And I'm like, this is going to be dead. Like, there's going to be no one watching this film at this time. And I rock up, and it was like gym class rejects, but that was the best crowd to watch it with, because there were some people who I would say were like kind of like me, just like on their own, fairly like average Joe looking people. But then you had your goth types, you had people who are very clearly like anime fans, people from different subcultures. And that's the thing I love the most about the Evil Dead as a franchise. It's the original cult classic where like people just latched onto this one really fucked up film and it built an entire franchise around it. And it's a great thing because they're great films. And it's really cool I see myself as quite like a normie, as a regular average Joe person. But it's nice because I love this series so much, to feel part of the cult following and part of the subculture. It's sort of a community feel to it. Every person in that room when I went to watch that film on Sunday was a fan of the Evil Dead franchise. They weren't just people turning up being like, this looks okay, I'll give this a bash.
Did you do a questionnaire when you were leaving the cinema or something? Did you do a survey?
No, I'm just saying, given the vibe and the sort of people there, because I mean, like, people were having a great time in this film. Like, people were like, there were gasps, there were a few giggles here and there. It's really, we probably now take it for granted again, just because all of us as a human race, we're terrible people. But it was one of those occasions where, since COVID, I was in a theater and I was like, fuck, I love watching films in a theater.
Yeah, and actually, it's something that you really try not to take for granted now, all things considered, like you said. But I actually saw, back to Warner Bros for a second, that today that they committed to not making any more films direct for streaming, that they're going to release everything in theaters. And it's just
great.
Such good news to see, like, a big studio, props to them for committing to that. Like, no more day and date, just like in the cinema, commit to that, and then put it on Max or whatever it is after that. But it's great to see.
It feels like Warner Brothers really have their shit together at the moment for big studios, even with what they're doing with HBO and what they're doing with Max as well now. And the IP that they've got and the way they're treating it, fucking more power to these guys, because they're doing for such a big corporation who've made huge mistakes in the past, they're doing really good at the moment, I think.
Which fills me with hope for the Harry Potter series. But I agree. Generally, they seem to have their shit together. So,
yeah, my thoughts on the Harry Potter series, I don't think it actually exists or it's ever going to be a thing.
You don't think it's gonna be?
No, I feel like it's a bit of a stock and marketing ploy.
I think that's a very hot take. I think by 2025, you and me will be doing our Muggles podcast, and we'll be watching 10 seasons.
We're gonna do a separate spin-off podcast.
I wasn't supposed to announce. Okay, no, we're gonna be talking on the Ad Lib Podcast. But I think it's gonna happen. I really do. I think it's like they shouldn't do it. Absolutely don't do it. Take your time. But I'd be shocked if it doesn't happen. Like, it's just too much money to not pass up for them. And I would be shocked if it doesn't happen now. Why would it fall through? Apart from, like, they're not going to run out of money. They're not going to not be able to find kids who want to be in Harry Potter. They have the sets, they have the fans, everything.
I think, but I don't think they have the trust or the want from the fans, because it's people who are extremely loyal to the book and to the characters in the films. And let's address the elephant in the room, which is J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, that's it. But honestly,
she's actively involved in the production.
Yeah, as an exec producer, and that can mean very little, but it does probably mean that she has a creative input and in some way, shape, or form. Probably some sort of like sign off on stuff. But I think that there's enough diehard fans out there that they will be willing to kind of overlook that, to be honest. Like, I don't think it'll be enough to derail a show, although there'll obviously be outcry about it. There already has been. And I think, like, most people, again, I've talked to about it, have been like, well, it'll let them do more with, like, the later books in the series, like 4 through to 7. Like, you can have, like, more of the side characters and more of the story of shine through and stuff like that, and correct some of the things that the films weren't that good at. Like, I agree with that. Like, I think it's a good platform for them, but, I just think it's too tough a job to, like, recast all those characters, not just the kids, but, like, all the brilliant, like, characters from Alan Rickman to the guy who played Hagrid, whose name Brendan I forget. Gleeson. But, like, there's all these brilliant characters, and then the central kids as well. And then, the first 3 films are pretty good. Like, they're pretty good, it's pretty tight, and, like, they're not going to work into 8 to 10 episode series. Like, again, I don't want to see a fucking flashback episode of how Harry's parents got killed. I promise you it'll happen. 100% gonna happen. And I'm just not interested in it. Personally, I think it just seems like just a cash grab.
Yeah, I've lost a lot of love for Harry Potter just because I kind of like just grew out of it. I even tried to play Hogwarts Legacy, and I got about 12 hours in, and I'm like, this is kind of corny and shit. So I
we were
just gave up
talking
on
about
it.
this off camera, but we were talking about how they don't have Quidditch in the game, and then they just announced like a Quidditch game. So
Yeah.
there you go. They were just waiting to pull
Of
the
course they were
trigger
gonna
on
do
that. But yeah, like I think it's just the whole thing feels very cynical, and that's kind of my little soapbox at the end. It's like no more Potter. Like, give me a new Potter.
Yeah.
Although J.K. Rowling fudged up the Fantastic Beasts films eventually, the first one was kind of cool, I thought, and like it showed
Yeah.
that you can tell different stories with the same in the same universe, and that's like, give me more of that. Like I'll happily watch like a Hogwarts Legacy thing, or like something far flung in the future, whatever it might be. Tell me how, you know, Nick nearly lost his head. I don't know, but like I just want to see something else that's not same shit.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that was an interesting tangent. We went from demonic possession and books of the dead to Harry Potter, but that's what we do on the Ad Lib podcast, and this is where I call out to the listeners. I know I should have done this earlier in the episode, but I live and I learn. What do you guys think of any of the news? What do you think about Beau is Afraid being so divisive? Tell us what you're excited about, what we heard about at CinemaCon. Have you seen Evil Dead Rise? Do you like the Evil Dead? We want to hear everything about it in the comments. As always, be sure to like, subscribe, leave us comments. Dave, it's been great. Do you think we'll see you again on the podcast? Maybe hopefully with the other guys
here.
here.
To the listeners, you know, if you have any feedback, potentially on like where else I can record this that isn't as shiny, that kind of thing, I'd really appreciate it. And I'd love to hop back on again for sure. So yeah, I'm trying to think of something funny to say to end it, but I got nothing, guys. I'm all out of. But it's been a pleasure. Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, it has been a pleasure. And with that, thank you everyone for tuning in. As usual, you can find us on all forms of social media, on your Facebooks, on your Instagrams, on your TikTok. You can listen to the podcast on YouTube, on Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Joe from the Ad Lib Podcast. Dave, once again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you all next week. See ya.